Hello and welcome to the Being Human podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Bottaro, and I'm really excited to introduce you today to a new saint cause, a canonization process for a new American saint, somebody you may or may not have heard of before, Nicholas Black Elk, servant of God Nicholas Black Elk. He was a Lakota Sioux Indian from South Dakota, and he was also a Catholic convert. He became a catechist. He was recognized as baptizing over 400 of the Native Americans that he served in his area and in his travels in the early 20th century. And so his cause has begun in 2016. And I recently had a chance to sit down with the person heading up the cause for his canonization, Deacon Bill White. Deacon Bill White himself has Native American roots and is also obviously Catholic. He's a deacon and somebody who's now considered what's called the postulator of the canonization cause. He's gathering together and creating the reports for Rome to look at the case. And he's recently actually invited me to be a part of the investigation as well. So it's a pretty cool thing I get to do as a Catholic psychologist and look at some of these areas of supernatural overlap between what might be natural, what might be supernatural. And in the case for the cause of saints, we look at miracles that happen. But Deacon Bill White is such a fascinating character. He's a war vet. He served in the Gulf War. He was in Afghanistan, and now he serves the people of God in his local area around Rapid City as a deacon, and he has a goal of preaching the gospel a certain amount of times every day and every week, and he has a deep devotion to Nicholas Black Elk, servant of God Nicholas Black Elk. So there's a really interesting overlap here of culture, of understanding worldview, where people are coming from. Black Elk himself really kind of bridges the gap between the indigenous native people and our Catholic faith. And this is something I think I'm going to be talking about a lot more in the coming months. There's another deep dive that I've been doing into the world of Our Lady of Guadalupe and the way in which God presented himself in the midst of and in the form of one of the native indigenous people here. I always think about how interesting it is. The one time in history God has painted a picture of his mom, and he put her in the religious or the spiritual and the framework of the indigenous people. And I specifically mean that spiritually and religious, not just cultural. There was a belief in a pathway being opened up to the Creator. And it would be through a particular story of flowers. And in Our Lady of Guadalupe's garment, there is a quatrefoil, four-leafed petal or four-petaled flower directly over the womb. And so anyway, that's a tangent we're not going to get into on today's episode. But the overlap of what God is doing in the midst of going out to all the nations, being present in all the peoples of the world, that is what is really fascinating here. And so Black Elk is a part of this bridge building that I think God is calling us to here in the 21st century. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Deacon Bill White as he sheds a lot of light and insight into bringing together different cultures for the sake of the gospel, for bringing Jesus as the answer to the questions that every people in all places at all times are seeking and longing for. God bless you.
I spent the last 10 years learning how to help people using the best techniques available in psychology integrated with the Catholic faith. Now we've figured out that there's a better way to help people than just slapping a Catholic label on the same secular model of therapy you find anywhere else. The real question is, how will we make this shift to a new model of truly Catholic accompaniment, keeping the psychological sciences in mind while opening up to a more human and more effective approach? This podcast is here to give you the answer. Join me and follow along as I take you behind the scenes of what this new model looks like using recorded audio from sessions working with my team, with colleagues, and even directly with clients. My name is Dr. Greg Bottaro, and I want to welcome you to the Being Human podcast.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
It's great to connect here. I'm really excited about conferences like we're at right now, and a lot of movement that it seems like is happening in the world, in the church. It seems like the Holy Spirit is really doing something new, and bringing out ways to bring the gospel to more people. And in this process, I've also been really deeply affected personally in how much learning about other cultures and other peoples that we want to bring the gospel to actually teaches us. And in the same time, it's a real sharing, and it's not just sort of clobbering people over the head with truth and expecting everybody to sort of just accept and go along with everything that certain people say, but it's a real depth of accompaniment and a journey. So I was really blessed in our paths crossing and seeing you in a position where you're working with the Lakota people, you're on the reservation, you're serving people as a deacon and bringing them the truth of the Catholic faith and ministering their needs, but also just really deeply understanding what that culture is and really sort of being present from the inside. So I just feel like there's so much to learn from your experience, and I'd really love to open that up a bit. But really, just to start off, let's start at the basics. Who are you?
Yeah, I'm Deacon Bill White, and I live on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, and I'm a deacon on the reservation, the only active deacon, the only deacon on the reservation. So I'm quite active. With my ministry, I guess, last year I did 35 funerals and wakes. So, that's the sad part about reservation ministry, I think, is a death.
And give us a layout of the reservation. So what does it actually look like, practically speaking? How many chapels are there? How many priests are around? How many people are there?
So we have one parish, and it's called Holy Rosary Parish, and it has 6 active churches in it that have weekly masses in it. So, that's down from, I guess, probably 50 years ago when they had like 35 churches on there. So we have 6, and the numbers are kind of down right now, I guess. And I mean, there's other people that they pray a different way, though. Spiritually, Lakota way. There's sun dances and sweat lodges and pipe ceremonies and.
Yeah, I want to break into that too, because a real interesting, the reason why we've come to know each other, and there's somebody else in the room right now besides Christ, but Nicholas Black Elk, who's really doing, I think, a lot of the instigating in bringing me into this world, and you've obviously been very active in this world. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, your role, and who Nicholas Black Elk is.
Yeah, Nicholas Black Elk was first call of fame, I guess, is through Black Elk Speaks, written by John Neihart, who wrote a book in the 30s, and I think it became popular in the 70s. I know it was required reading for me when I was in high school. And it spoke about his Lakota spirituality. He was a medicine man, a healer throughout his tribe, and he's like the third of his family to be a medicine man. So he did the healing and stuff, and he was afforded a vision when he was like 8 years old, and this vision is basically it said that we must all live together, all peoples live together, and I believe that formed him throughout his whole life, and so and he was afforded, kind of looking back on his life, and I think God's presence was guiding him throughout his whole life, forming him in what he afforded him the opportunity to travel Europe and see Catholicism in Europe and the big churches there, and and he said, he was amazed on everybody showing up on Sundays there and going to these big buildings and praying. So, and his first wife, she was a Catholic woman, and he wasn't until 1904 when he was baptized in. But his kids were Catholic, and he was in the late 1890s probably. He was writing for a Protestant paper, and so there's a lot of writings out there that he had, and they're available on the website too.
That was before his conversion, before he was baptized.
And he even signed the petition for Saint Kateri to become a saint before he was actually a Catholic.
Is that right?
Yeah, he did. So it's kind of neat that that the cause is for him to be a saint. And
She's returning the favor here.
Yeah. I mean, she's and there's just there's so many things happen that are moving this. I just feel really good about where it's at and where it's going, and I'm pretty sure that I'll see his canonization. And
please God. Well, you were mentioning before, so the people they're not coming to church anymore as much, and they have their form of prayer. And he really bridged the gap between the old ways, the traditional ways of the indigenous and his people, and then he was baptized 1904. And he becomes Catholic, and he learns how to pray. He has deep reverence for the Mass, for the sacraments, but he still held his traditional cultural ways of experiencing spirituality. And so I love the pictures of him with a rosary in one hand and the pipe in the other hand. And I think a lot of white America, at least in my generation and how we were raised and kind of thought about some of these things, it's like the Indian spirituality was all polytheistic and pagan, and there's a spirit in the tree, and it's no different than the spirit of the water, and there's no real God. It's all these paganistic kind of things. And then also, even sadly, thinking about the pipe, it's sort of thrown around as a joke that pass the peace pipe or smoke the peace pipe. The illusion and reference is that it's marijuana when it's used in pop culture like that, and then come to find out it has nothing to do with it. It was not people getting high on drugs. That's not what the peace pipe is. No. So I've just been on this journey of correcting so many ignorant misunderstandings of what I was raised with, and then discovering that there's so much more to learn and understand and appreciate about the work that God is doing in our world through different cultures and people. And so I think the time is right. And you're talking about that feeling of, something's happening now even more so. Kateri, her cause, I just saw this, her cause was started in 1680. So, over 300-year process of her. Hopefully Nicholas Black Elk's not going to be going through the same process.
Somewhere I think I seen where it was like 112 years for her when they opened the cause.
Okay.
Time to open the cause to her canonization.
But this is so Black Elk's cause opened in, is it 2016 or 17?
Yes, 2017.
2017.
Yeah.
So, already there's potentially a miracle that we're looking at. There's a lot more people learning about the cause and maybe picking up a little bit of speed.
Yeah, I'm getting calls from all over the United States, and and I hear about people in Germany and in Czech Republic.
Wow.
We got letters from the Czech Republic, and they're aware of Nicholas Black Elk, and they're praying for him too. So
yeah,
you need to just keep getting the word out and getting the miracles, and hopefully we have two lined up before he's even venerable.
Yeah,
that would be. It'd be nice to get one qualified, so he would be like a martyr. After they're venerable, they're blessed right away.
Yeah. Okay.
So if we had one miracle, he could become blessed right away.
Yeah.
Right away, and then we'd just have to wait for the second one.
Yeah.
But I'm confident that just the things that are happening, that he's at work, I believe, and they're helping us. Like that. our first Father Escalante. He's our first Roman postulator, and he said if we didn't pick this cause up, he said the saints in heaven would stir until someone did. He said because the time is right that we need Nicholas as a saint now. You know, and you don't have to go very far and see the division, and even in our country, even in our state, you know, and it's
our country, our state, our politics here. Yeah. And, you know, I was really struck as well. This was John Paul II's a big push in his heart and what he was trying to do, his message of the new evangelization, but also just cultural sensitivities and a respect. And there's the indigenous people of Australia, the Aboriginal people that he went out and met with. And he has a quote from his visit there that he said, "The Church of Australia will not be itself until it includes the culture of the Aboriginal people." And I thought that principle is so beautiful. Again, it's not just this movement of going to whitewash, you know, or just wash over other cultures and peoples, but to recognize that. And I think this is a really important point, because even if we don't have any understanding of other cultures, to even really understand the dignity of our own culture, it starts at the dignity of being human. And that's where God imprints the beauty of being made in his image, at the very basis of being human. So if we follow that out, then if the Aboriginal people in Australia are human, then they're going to have the mark of dignity of God's being. And if the indigenous here in North America, they're going to have a mark of God in their very being. So it's not even just about reparations, or, you know, a lot of this stuff gets swept into political movements and ideologies, but I think this is about really deepening an understanding of the human person. And then once we see that, then it's like, oh, you're a different kind of human person, that you have so much to share that I can learn and grow from. And I'm a different kind of human person. I have so much to share that other people can grow from. But that turns us deeper into a community.
Yeah, you know, the church's been enculturated through its existence, you know, and I mean, they turned Jesus into a blonde-haired, blue-eyed person,
right?
You know, and so,
yeah, that wasn't him.
You know, so that's even enculturation. So I mean, and I respect that. You know, I mean, I respect the way a person sees Jesus, his God. I mean, our God.
Yeah.
You know, we all make it in our likeness. And we are made in his likeness. So we should see him. We should see ourselves.
It's interesting because we were just reflecting on walking the hallways here, and here in New Mexico, you were just sharing with me is the place where they've done a lot of work on the shrine, the shroud of Turin. Yeah. And the shroud, it's one of those tangible connections to the life of Christ here in his incarnation. But isn't it fascinating? Because that's bringing into the 21st century an experience of the actual person of Jesus as he walked this planet. And actually, that's really surprising for people who have sort of been convinced that the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus is the real and only Jesus. But it's like, no, now these renditions are clearly, there's this Middle Eastern man. You know, he's not from Germany. You know, he's not from Europe. And so that's where there's a lot of these pieces coming together. The other thing we've been talking about is Our Lady of Guadalupe, and new research showing a lot of more depth to understanding that miracle than we've ever known before. But Our Lady, this always strikes me, the one time that God decided to paint a picture himself of his own mother, and he puts her in the garments and in the symbolism of the indigenous people of North America. That's his one and only picture he painted of his own mom.
Yeah, it's
just
beautiful. It's amazing. And the more you learn about that, it's just so powerful. You know that there's 12 people images in her eyes.
Oh yeah.
You know?
That's the craziest miracle.
You know, and they said we can replicate that with any technology, even today, you know, and to have that much detail on a piece of cactus material.
Yeah, material not from the area. Yeah. The roses were not local to the. There's so many miracles, and then but also the story of Juan Diego had details in it that only now are we realizing would have been prophetic to the Aztecs and the Nahua people who were indigenous at the time, that all those millions of people that converted, only research being done right now is revealing that it's connected to prophecies that they had for thousands of years before the Spanish were even there. And so when Juan Diego, he talked about two kinds of birds that were singing, and he saw certain kinds of flowers on the hill of Tepeyac where Our Lady invited him to talk. And those two specific birds and those flowers are one part of the prophecy that had been in song and poetry for the Aztecs for thousands of years. So when the local governors or the leaders of the villages of the indigenous all across Mexico, they would have heard that story and they would have immediately known, this is the moment. This is the prophecy we've been waiting for thousands of years. So that's why people went en masse. Hundreds of thousands, millions of people crossing to just find a priest. Because that was the story. The priest now can give the baptism. And they were willing to go days without food, going across mountains barefoot, carrying babies, having babies on the way. All these things happening just to get to a priest so they can get the baptism. And it's an unbelievable story.
Yeah, I think that alone, I heard 10 million people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we see that. It's like I think we are at a time of a deepening of our faith and a deepening of the scales falling from our eyes, that we can grow in an appreciation for humanity itself. And then within cultures, within different experiences of humanity across the globe, that's where God is inviting us to go. And when he says, go make disciples of all nations, it's not just go change everybody out of their culture, but it's now go actually enter into those cultures to learn to speak the language and then show them how Jesus is what they're seeking and the culmination of each one of their individual cultures. I mean, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking more about with your experience, how you see what is present already in the Lakota culture and spirituality that Jesus answers. Does that make sense?
No. No.
Like if this is another topic too, is with Black Elk, who comes from Pine Ridge Reservation. Yes. And there's obviously a lot of feelings around the history of Wounded Knee and a lot of the tragedies and travesties and traumas that have occurred. So some people have the opinion of canonizing Black Elk as maybe not a respectful thing. It's almost like applying these white Christian principles to the indigenous people. Whereas some other people who know him personally or knew him personally, and they realize he actually did have a conversion and he was thoroughly Catholic, then they see this possibility of building the bridge. And I'm always thinking about, well, how can we continue bridge building for the people that are still really hurt or still don't see the connection or still think of the Christianity story as totally other, where God wants to show how Christ is actually the answer to all of their culture and their desires and their prayers in different ways, that he's the sort of culmination of what every human is really seeking, albeit in different ways. So do you see any actual connections? We talked about sweating or the pipe ceremony or even the sun dance. Like where do those things speak to the fact that there's natural in the human heart as a longing for something that Christ then comes in and brings to fruition?
Yeah, I think and like we talked earlier, and I think Christ was present before Columbus got here.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to focus is more on what we have similar rather than our differences.
Right.
Even the pipe. I mean, the pipe was brought by a woman, the calf woman. And she brought the pipe and said, "Pray with this." It's not like that they were praying to anything, but to God, one God.
Yeah, to the
creator.
one God. Yeah, so that they had that spirituality of one sovereign creator.
Creator God, yes.
Yeah.
Grandfather, they called him grandfather, and some people even struggle with that, rather than father, I guess. They call him grandfather, and there's some people kind of frown at that. But, in the Lakota way, anyone your grandfather's age or older, you would address him as grandfather. So Tunkashla is a formal way of saying grandfather. So who's the most formal grandfather we have? Is Jesus. So there's one of the examples, I think, just by the words at Tunkashla. You don't call your biological grandfather Tunkashla. There's a different name.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So Tunkashla means grandfather, but not your grandfather. I mean.
And is there a sense of personal closeness, of affection, of fondness? That's part of it. Like I've witnessed it when I see people embrace each other. It seems like a very close familial kind of cultural sort of sense of expression. But is that in the word?
Yeah. No, it's it's greeting. I mean, a native man will go out of his way to shake your hand just to greet you. I mean, he won't just. I think the greeting's even different, And
I think that's an important connection because I know, at least when I've been taught, our Father, and Jesus calls God Father, he calls him Abba. But then it was really important. I've always been taught this important distinction that Abba carries within it a sense of closeness. And it's like in English, there's Father and then there's Daddy, and so saying Abba is more like Daddy. It's more of like a term of endearment and affection. And so that I see the expression of that. I wonder if that word for grandfather carries within it the same sort of endearment or affection.
Yeah, it's, you ask anyone, who's Tunkashla? What is it? And he's everything. It's everything, and I mean, so, I guess the explanation where you have is, to me, and Jesus comes to mind.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Jesus is everything. He's the reason for our existence and our journey and where we need to go and what that inner calling is that we all have, that we, during our spiritual journeys, I guess we confuse it with other things, with them.
Yeah, and these divisions become really sort of lead us off the path, I think, and focusing on these divisions. Like even just this morning, so we did the sunrise service, as it was called in the program. I don't know if that's what it's really called, but is that something that would be done every day, or is there a sort of a regular cadence to that? Sure.
I mean, greeting the morning star, I guess, is, it's one thing. Traditionally, a prayerful man, he would greet the star. He would pray at the end of the day. He would pray, and it kind of comes to mind the liturgy of the hours.
I was just going to ask you about that. I was just going to say that.
I mean,
so we're sitting in a circle. We're outside. There's the sunrise coming up, and then the person leading the service is calling to mind the Creator, blessing the Creator, thanking the Creator for another day, and then talking about blessing God in the birds. And he mentioned the birds that were flying overhead. And I was thinking about the psalm, and blessing the water creatures and, dolphins of the sea. And, it's this is right out of the Psalms. It's like we're doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how many people would struggle with blessing a rock? And I mean, why is a rock blessed? Well, I thought about that too. And I think a rock is blessed because a rock does what God designed it to be. A rock.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't vary any at all. It's a rock, and so it's blessed because it's doing what God intended it to be.
What's that scripture? Where does it say that even if all the voices fall silent, the rocks themselves could not be silent, the rocks themselves would cry out? Do you know, I'm forgetting the reference right now, but.
Yeah, in the liturgy's hours, that blessed, you do it every every feast day when, like Apostle, you read that one.
Oh, yeah.
Blessed everything,
Yeah.
blessed rocks, the dolphins comes to
I always
mind.
like that one.
Yeah.
It's a
Seems like
non-preacher to
everybody,
call
you're
out.
not the first one that heard that. Everybody likes the dolphins.
It's kind of out of nowhere. Yeah. But it's, I think what I was experiencing this morning in that prayer is it's very integrated. It involves the body. We're standing outside, we're welcoming a sign of light, and these things are so scriptural. But in our modern Western culture, we're all over technologized. We, stay in our houses, we're on our computers, we're sitting. How much do we actually go outside? How much do we actually see God in His creation? And so I think there's so much to be said for building these bridges that we actually learn from the cultures that are present to us, that are local to us, that are still in connection with nature. Without sort of saying, well, that must be pagan because their spirituality is tied to nature. It's like, well, that person hasn't opened up the scriptures or the Old Testament anytime lately. Yeah. The whole thing is filled with a whole people that saw God in everything. Yeah.
St. Ignatius, he see Jesus in everyone, in everything, and that's what Mendakuye Oyasi, it means we're all related.
Oh, yeah.
Praise, and it's not just me and you it's everything. Everything that God made, we're all created by God. So we're all related.
So how do you approach if people are from the reservation, the native people there, and they don't feel connected with the Black Elk sort of movement, or that it's even right for people to be elevating him to this level of connection point with this historically painful reality?
A lot of people said, yeah, he wasn't Catholic, but he worked for the church for 30 years. You don't do anything for 30 years unless your heart's in it, especially
Right.
today, there's people switch jobs all the time, and he did something for 30 years that, and he brought over 400 people. Just think if his heart was in it, how many he would have brought,
Yeah.
if he wasn't, and another thing is his family members, a lot of them, I know I'm related to some of the Black Elks. And, I know a lot of them were Catholic, like George Looks Twice, who started this. George Looks Twice was the one in Rome when St. Kateri was canonized.
Oh, yeah.
And he sat by Mark Thiel, who was the archivist that had all the information about his grandfather.
Yeah, by the way, we'll put a link to it in our show notes here, but there's a great documentary that's available online. The name just escaped me. What is it? Walking the Good Red Road.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Diocese of Rapid City put that out and tells this story.
Yeah.
And Mark is in there being interviewed, and they showed, I don't know if it was real video footage, but they showed that they were at the canonization for Saint Kateri. Yeah, and they happened to be next to each other, sitting near each other.
Sitting next to him, and he said, I can hardly wait till my grandfather. I wish my grandfather was getting canonized. And he talked a little bit. And then Mark Thiel immediately knew that he was talking about Nicholas Black Elk, because he had all the information in his archives about him from Holy Rosary Mission at the time. And that's where Black Elk was.
Those are the kinds of the moments that keep happening.
Yeah.
It's like, here we are, if one person's here, another person's there, people are talking, people are just showing up randomly in places.
People call it coincidence. But what's really remarkable is, so God just made a native saint, Saint Kateri. And then in the audience, when he's getting canonized, he's starting the next.
Yeah.
The next person that, I believe that he wants to be canonized.
And that's why I really do see this happening on a bigger picture
that there's this movement, I think, into the 21st century now.
Everybody's going to have to start seeing that we are all related,
Yes.
and we're going to have to concentrate on what we have similar rather than focusing on the differences.
Yeah.
I mean, I do feel a movement and I feel excited about it. I mean,
I didn't know, actually, I just learned about the martyrs, the cause for the martyrs in Florida. And, we had the speaker here, Dr. Mary. And so that's eye-opening, just how much of that history is actually here. And again, it's very different from, most public school educational sort of curriculum. Doesn't really get into these details. But we're on this land that is rich in the history of deep faith, and also blood and martyrdom. But people who have been giving their lives to Christ for a very long time.
Yeah, she told me something today too that I didn't realize. And Saint Kateri, and why was Saint Isaac Joes and them canonized before Saint Kateri? Because she was in that same group. And she told me that St. Isaac Joe and them were martyred, and St. Kateri wasn't martyred. So they had to split it.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you can't run two.
Right. And so she died of an illness.
Yes.
But I just recently put this together that she was really, from the beginning of her catechesis to her death, it was 5 years. Like the whole Saint Kateri movement is based on 5 years of this young girl's life. I mean, that is just really remarkable and really profound.
Yeah.
So much happens in 5 years. I mean, the life of this girl, only 5 years of her life.
To show that much love of Christ, for 5 years.
And it's amazing. Again, it's like, well, Christ, his public ministry was 3 years, and then obviously his crucifixion and death was the salvation for the entire world. But he, I think about that too. Like all of that is just 3 years of work. Everything else was the 30 years in preparation for it.
Yeah. Yeah, he's molding us, and it's just like Nicholas, I mean, he was molded his whole year and he put through a lot of trials in his life, and he could see salvation and not be stuck in the sin of people down here.
Yeah.
And not blame one race for him, because he, early on he started praying for even his enemies, and he said God has a place for all of us.
And he was at Wounded Knee. I mean, when he says
the massacre
enemies,
at Wounded Knee, yeah,
he means
he was at he was at the Greasy Grass or the Little Bighorn.
Yeah.
He was there, and then he was at Wounded Knee, and
yeah. So that terrible massacre at Wounded Knee, if he's, I was just giving a talk on the different saints as examples of mental health and understanding going through mental illness, and I used him as an example of trauma. And today, if anybody was sort of around something like that, that would just be, it's obviously traumatic. Even people that were recently, in the Middle East and different experiences out there, and everything is about trauma. And very seldom do we hear anymore about growing from trauma and resilience through trauma, and then how we can come out on the other side. But Christ is the first example. Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. Obviously, that's a horrific trauma that gives us a model for how to handle our traumas. But he did it. Nicholas did it.
Yeah, because, it is basically the non-native people that brought him Christ, and the same people that, the same people that were on, that did the horrific things at Wounded Knee, but he could see through them, and, I don't think he categorized peoples, I think he judged people on their own merits individually.
Yeah. Which is a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But it's very colorful and complex. And I was actually really enjoying your story of your own family background. And it was your mom who has the indigenous line of tradition, but she was fully Catholic, right?
Yeah, she was fully. My dad was a non-native from West Virginia, and he came out in. I was telling you on his dog tags, he had no preference. Mm-hmm. You know, my dog tags would have Catholic.
Yeah,
they have Catholic on them, but you know, so I mean, a lot of people. I even pose this as a question: is where do you think my Catholicism came from? Is my white dad or my Lakota mom? And I mean, everybody thinks my dad is the one, but it's actually came from my native side.
It's the way God writes straight with crooked lines, and you never know. It's so different than what we always expect. So you have Black Elk, who was catechized by his non-native, you know, what some people would say captors, but then he's building this bridge, and then it opens up these channels that maybe in some way relates to how your grandmother, great-grandmother ended up having a rich Catholicism and faithful Christian life, passing that down along with tradition. So then you end up understanding that part of your life because of your mom's native lineage, not your white dad's lineage. Yeah. It's like, you know, there's no rule book here for the way God makes these things happen.
Yeah. Yeah, he's calling us, and we just got to slow down and listen to him. You know, and like I told you, my great-grandmother, she was 12 years old when Wounded Knee happened, and she was at Holy Rosary Mission at the time. And she told me a story about Red Cloud coming with a band, you know, and they were mad. And some of them with Red Cloud were talking about burning the church down, and Red Cloud kind of stopped, is what my grandmother told me, and said, this isn't where the fight is at. You know, and she was 12 years old when Wounded Knee happened, and I got to talk to this woman that experienced this because she died in 79.
Wow.
103 years old. So, wow. Yeah, so, and she took communion up until the day she died.
That's beautiful.
Celebrated Mass, and they would come, and yeah, so that is where my Catholicism come from.
And then Wounded Knee, so Red Cloud died shortly after that?
I'm not sure when Red Cloud died, but he's buried at Holy Rosary. And
yeah. So there's so many connection points here, but I think all of it invites us to go deeper and sort of questioning the stories and narratives we've been given, and then maybe seeking more personal relationships with people, because it's been relationships with people, listening to you, just listening to other people's stories, and suddenly like different realities emerge that I didn't know were there. But in the center of all of it, and the sort of thread that runs between all of these stories is the beauty of God and how much he's actually really present here.
Seeking the truth.
Yeah.
You know, and it's all over, and it's in everything, and I don't know if we'll ever get to the bottom of it. It's just like our faith.
Yeah. And you know, another thing that I wanted to relate or bring out of this is just how much it is sort of, and I don't know if this is specific to the Lakota, but the idea of listening to people and just sharing stories is really profound. And I don't think, at least in New England and, you know, a lot of fast-paced, you know, again, postmodern sort of culture, it's like we don't stop and take time to just talk and listen. And that's been really remarkable. And I think that's another one of these things that we actually have a lot more to learn from the native people than necessarily what we have to force on anybody. We actually probably should learn a little bit more of that.
Yeah, because, you know, and they get criticized for native time, you know.
Yeah.
Indian time being late, 2 hours late is Indian time or whatever. But, you know, the native people believe that the most important time is a time I have right now. You know, with this, so whatever I have planned can wait, because this is the most important time. Is right now is this time I have with you and visiting you, because this time we can never get back again. Yeah. You know, so we can't cut it short and run off. And it's kind of like your light bulb story. And I can relate it to that. remember when you went after a light bulb and it took 2 days to go?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in Haiti.
In Haiti, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same. It's interesting when you say like people say Indian time, but people also say island time, and they also say Haitian time, and you start to realize, wait a minute, why is it that this modern Western culture, this sort of I would say American, I don't really know much more than that, but American way to think about time is right, and all of these other cultures around us are wrong, where we come up with a derogatory term for whoever the culture is, just stick their cultural name on that and then call it Indian time or whatever time, as if that's a bad thing, and we're the ones who are doing it right. It's like, when you look around and you came up with 8 derogatory terms because there's 8 other cultures who know how to slow down and appreciate each other in the time, maybe we're the ones, maybe we need to call it, I don't know, postmodern time or something, and that's the one that we need to get derogatory about, because it's like, hey, maybe take off your watch, maybe actually just enjoy people. And that comes back to the dignity of the human person. So yeah, my story about being in Haiti and needing to go get a light bulb and it takes 2 days, because you stop and have coffee and you stay and you end up, it's too dark, and then you stay overnight somewhere, and then you have a nice breakfast the next morning, and it's just like, you're enjoying people. That's, what else is there?
Yeah, I think that's what Jesus wants us to do. You know, it's
I recently heard a talk, somebody said that the devil hates time, because it's a sort of mystery of time, where the time almost doesn't matter. And also, there's always more of it now in like the way God wants us to step into it. So the time will open up opportunities and open up conversion and open up grace and open up our development. And so on both angles, the devil hates it. And he finds ways to, I think, prick us and to tempt us, distorting time. Like, oh, time's so important, we have to wrap this up, or we have to get to an appointment. It's a distortion of time, where it's like, the reality is actually time can maybe be put on hold because we're actually entering into a real encounter.
You know, I had a revelation, I think, last week. You know, and I think I get it from a homeless person. You know, we always want so much more for a homeless person. We want him to get a job, to do something different, and it kind of made me think of my life, you know, and I'm doing jail ministry, I'm doing this until what? What is the what? No, I'm going to do this because this is what I do, you know, until I'm called home. I mean, I don't want to look any further than what my ministry is right now, you know, and so when I look at a homeless guy, you know, we want so much for him, but we don't know how he feels about where he's at. You know, he don't have the anxiety of being something else or doing something. That's our anxiety for him. You know, I mean, he could be happy and comfortable and at peace to where he is.
Wouldn't that be ironic if he's wishing for us that we could have some more of what he has?
Yeah, you know. So you know, I don't know why. I was always thinking, I'm going to do this ministry until. And I got thinking, until what? This is what I do.
Yeah.
I'm here. You know, and so.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. Well, that's really good. What's happening? So we're, in terms of the cause for Black Elk, I know that there's some pieces coming together. There's a possible miracle. And what's coming up in your prayer and in your sort of sense of sort of how this is going and how this is going to go? You
know, and it seemed like, so I was in a paid deacon position, and I resigned here about a month ago. And it seemed like after I resigned, that people start calling me in New Orleans, in Montana, and in Maryland. And they want me to come talk or come give them information. And it seemed like I've been answering more calls than I did. I don't know if I was missing them because of time.
Yeah, working too hard.
Yeah, you know, but so I'm just, I think things are coming in place, you know, and yeah, they're talking about St. Elizabeth Seton celebration in Maryland,
Oh, yeah.
at the shrine there. And Nicholas was picked as one of the ones they invited to have a table at this, because they said there's over 100 and some servant of gods in the United States now.
Oh, that's really beautiful.
Yeah. So, and he made the short list, I guess.
Yeah. Did you say they picked 30 that
30,
they're going to
32
highlight?
Yeah, they're
at
going to
the
highlight.
celebration.
I think 20 of them, agreed, or last I heard, said they could make it.
Oh, wow.
And they're expecting 1,000 to 1,500 people there. These are the people that I wouldn't touch probably normally, or not for a long time, if So it's afforded me the opportunity to go there and to touch some people that probably need to hear about Nicholas Black.
There really is something stirring. And then we end up with an American Pope.
Yeah.
It's like, what is happening? Politically, there's a lot of stuff that's been happening, for better, for worse, or whatever. This is not a commentary on that, but there's definitely like jostling movement happening. American Pope, which is totally an anomaly nobody saw coming, and then you look around and there really are some really beautiful stories of saints, or servants of God, or not technically officially saints, but people who lived virtuous lives that were saintly, that brings it all a lot closer to home. For us here, it's like God is really giving us this chance to maybe reconsider the paths that we're on. Maybe come back to the Great Red Road.
Yeah, and like Nicholas, one of the things he does for me is he served in a capacity similar to what I do now, and he did it for 30 years. He never burned out. He kept his humor. He kept his pleasantness, and he was described as living in heaven long before his death. The peace that comes with that, I think is, he greeted everyone who he encountered.
Yeah, I think his joy and humor, that sense of solidity, and the sort of, he knew who he was, he knew what he was about, and he didn't need anything from anyone, really. It's what I read into it and what I see. But he also had this just good humor, and he would crack a joke. He was a bit of a jokester, right? And I've found, in times that I've needed it, if I turn to him in prayer for the grace of humor, he can lighten my mood, or, if I'm feeling a little grumpy, or if I'm feeling a little burned out, or if I'm a little irritable, or whatever it is. If I turn to him for that with that prayer to give me some levity and to see things with a bit more perspective and maybe have a little of that humor, it's like all of a sudden a smile comes into my soul. And it's been really profoundly effective. And not that the other saints aren't good at that or anything else, but like for whatever reason, I've been drawn to pray to him for that specific grace, and it comes. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it's just another thing too that just came to mind is like we smudged Azalea this morning, with the shell and
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people criticize that too. So, and how does that differ from incense? And the Bible doesn't say you can use a shell for that, but it doesn't say you can use the incenser as big as a car either. You
see the ones in the Spain, they have to throw those things across.
Shoveling, and
man, yeah.
And then, so I just don't know why they want to criticize that. It's only because who's holding the shell.
Yeah, and the intention, who people are praying to, like those are the things that actually matter. And then once it struck me when I was really, actually I think it was incense. Because I was reading from the Old Testament where they were talking about setting up the altar with incense. And then it struck me that these are the Jewish tribes of Israel. And I started to see the Old Testament totally differently as tribes. And I was like, wait a minute, these are tribal nations. And this is where God needed to come into humanity through one lineage because he's becoming truly man. So there had to be a genetic lineage. Obviously, he picked a chosen people to enter into our humanity. But that is one tribe. And then you have all these other tribes across the rest of the face of the planet. And they are all very similar in so many ways. So the things that get baptized or redeemed through Christ that are in the tribal lineage of the Jewish people, why would there be this need to delineate and separate out as somehow evil a lot of those elements that are found in all the other tribes? So if it's incense, okay, these are the, this is the Jewish incense, this is the Australian incense, this is, the North American incense. But what's the difference? We're talking about burning plants that grow out of the ground.
Yeah. And frankincense comes from a tree in Africa.
Right.
We don't have trees in Africa here. So we use sage and we use flat cedar and we use sweetgrass.
Right. And some of those are even in the incense that they use in the Vatican.
Yeah. And then if you ever look at a Catholic store too, they're coming out with a lot of scents,
So I started praying with incense, and as a friar, we did that a lot. And then I sort of returned back to that practice a little bit, and the friars get really picky which flavor they're going to be lighting. There's certain flavors, certain ones you're only supposed to use on Easter or whatever. They have all these different particularities. Yeah. But it's interesting because then it's like, we're using our senses. We're using things of the earth that God created. He made us. He made the things of the earth. He made our smell. He made us to be connected with these things in a certain way. And all of this can be directing us back towards Him. And so why in the world would that be the stumbling block? It's like the morning service this morning, praising God for the sun He created, for the birds He created, for the sage and the other elements of what were being burned, to lift our minds and hearts to God.
Purify our minds, to take it. One thing for me, when I enter a place where they've been burning sage or something, my mind cleanses me and it goes straight to thinking about God. And we incense too when we get crabby, or if we've been around a real emotional conversation, our tensions get high, So we'll light incense or...
Yeah, now with functional medicine and with a lot of the science now they can research what's actually happening in the brain, what's happening in the body, and you can see why a lot of these things actually make natural sense. Like, these are very good natural things. And a lot of the Old Testament, a lot of the laws of the Old Testament are about very natural things. Purifications and things that are keeping people free from disease, cleansing and all these different rules. Like, God is with us. He's trying to help us. And He's like, this is how I made you. This is what I put in the world around you. So the two can go fit together because I want you to be healthy and happy. So just, use these things. And then we can take that up into our spiritual lives and our journey towards Him.
Even if I'm crabby, or if if I have evil thoughts or bad thoughts or something, I'll smudge off and get rid of those, and it'll cleanse my mind. And I'm crabby, but I do have a warning though: if your wife's crabby, don't smudge her off.
And by the way, smudging is burning the incense, and then there's a sense of sort of washing in it almost, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're not actually physically smudging somebody with something. We're talking about the smoke.
Yeah, purifying you. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of beautiful connections to be made here, and certainly a lot of understanding that we can grow in. And I think that I feel very strongly that Nicholas Black Elk is right in the center of that movement, and it seems that he's going to have a big part to play in this moving forward. I
think all the saints are up there looking at us and saying, how is this? And I think God sends people down here that He needs to kind of, those are His chess pieces.
Moving people, in their will. Yeah. And the holiness, that's one of the journey to God. As every individual grows in holiness, they become more and more docile to the will of God. And it's like, we're all the chess players. Like, we're all the chess pieces, He's the chess player. We're the pieces. So every one of us that grows in the journey of opening ourselves up to Him become an instrument and a piece that's in the journey for each other. So, wow, praise God that we get to do this.
Yeah.
This is pretty awesome. Well, thank you so much for this time. And I know we have endless amounts of it if we don't worry about it. But I appreciate you sharing your heart and your story. And to all of our listeners here, look deeper into the story of Nicholas Black Elk and maybe some of these connections here. And I'm going to put some links in the show notes here to follow up on that. And I hope this has blessed you, and I hope it's a blessing to you as well. It is certainly for me.
So, servant of God, Nicholas Black Elk.
Pray for us.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Being Human podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode and want to help us spread the word and hear more, please head over to iTunes, leave us a review, and subscribe, as it really helps us to get our content out to more people. Be sure to listen next time as I take you deeper into what it means to be human. If you want more free content and information about what we do at the Catholic Psych Institute, head on over to CatholicPsych.com. God bless you.